The Irish saved civilization, a fairly bold claim, and while they didn't save the world, what they did do is preserve a large portion of history and a decent chunk of Europe's culture, to say the least. Without the work of the Irish people, we would be living in a very different world. With all that out of the way, let's learn some history. This is mainly the story of a transitional period from the classical to the medieval, which means we gotta talk Rome. By the end of its reign, the full Roman Empire, both east and west, had conquered from the British Isles to Egypt, bringing their culture, technology, and trade to all corners of their empire. And a major connective part of that empire was the Christian churches. So when the Western Empire up and slowly died, the local bishops of the church were the leaders that the people turned to. As communities rallied around the churches and communities sprang up around them, protect, or at least what they could do, against the abandoned legions and bandits who went from town to town in droves, plundering all that they could. And that is what leads us to Ireland. You see, Ireland was a small province at the end of the empire, safely tucked away on an island at the very edge of Europe, which means a few things. Firstly, there wasn't a legion of troops stationed there to wreak havoc as soon as things fell apart and they stopped getting paid. And secondly, the churches had the protection of not only the religious communities, but also the royalty of Ireland. So while the rest of the Western world fell apart, many missionaries fled for Ireland, bringing cultural and religious artifacts along with them, leading to some of the first true cities of Ireland. And due to its isolation, the populace grew slowly, and the knowledge was passed down and transcribed. Slowly, Ireland became a hub of universities and scholarship, spreading the knowledge that they had carefully preserved, becoming the Isle of Saints and Scholars. Here's a quote remarking the era of Irish scholarship from How the Irish Saved Civilization by Thomas Keller. In this dazzling new culture, a book was not only an isolated document on a dusty shelf. Book surely spoke to book, and writer to scribe, and scribe to reader. From one generation to the next, these books were, as one would say in today's jargon, open interfacing and intertextual, glorious literary smorgasbords, in which the scribe often tried to include a bit of everything from every era, language, and style known to him. So we know how the Irish did save civilization, but an important question would be, what did they say? Well, they preserved manuscripts of Greek and Latin writers, both pagan and Christian, as well as documenting various cultural artifacts from all throughout Europe. And here's one final quote to round things out. Wherever they went, the Irish brought with them their books, many unseen in Europe for centuries, and tied to their waists as signs of triumph, just as Irish heroes had once tied to their waists their enemies' heads. Where they went, they brought their love of learning and their skills in bookmaking. In the bays and valleys of their exile, they re-established literacy and breathed new life into the exhausted literary culture of Europe. And that is how the Irish saved civilization.